Toto Wolff was reportedly observing Max Verstappen driving a Mercedes at the Nurburgring, and by the end of the session, the entire paddock was asking the same question: how is he adapting so quickly? Because this was not Formula One. This was the green hell, over 25 kilometers of blind corners, forests, bumps, traffic, shifting weather, and more than 150 turns where even a minor mistake can instantly destroy a car. Most drivers need years to build confidence here. Verstappen needed just one weekend to qualify fourth, and the numbers behind it make the story almost unreal. His Mercedes AMG GT3 ended up less than a second off pole position over a full Nurburgring lap. That alone is extraordinary. It is the kind of performance that completely changes how other professional drivers view you. But the story takes a more surprising turn. Mercedes actually pulled Verstappen out of the car before the final pole shootout, even though he had already set one of the fastest laps of the weekend. Why would a team remove its quickest driver at such a critical moment? Because inside the garage, they had already realized something concerning. Max Verstappen was not treating this like a Formula One champion casually trying endurance racing. He was driving like someone who had the potential to dominate it. And once nightfall arrived, along with traffic, fatigue, and possible rain at the Nurburgring, people inside Formula One began to understand that this performance might be far more significant than a one-off GT appearance. Initially, many in Formula One saw Verstappen's Nurburgring outing as a side experiment, just a fun detour, before returning to his main championship. But that perception quickly disappeared once the track action began, because the Nurburgring exposes weaknesses faster than almost any circuit in the world. Reputation means nothing here. Even world champions have struggled, and experienced endurance specialists still approach it with caution. A single mistake can end everything, yet Verstappen appeared comfortable almost immediately, which immediately drew attention. The Nordschleife stretches over 25 kilometers with more than 150 corners weaving through forests, elevation changes, bumps, and blind crests. Some corners tighten unexpectedly while drivers are already committed, while others disappear over hills with barriers waiting beyond them. It is like racing at extreme speed on a mountain road that keeps disappearing in front of you. That is why it is called the Green Hell, and Verstappen attacked it as if he had been racing there for years. From Thursday, there were already signs something unusual was happening. Conditions were difficult, cold weather, damp patches, and frequent yellow flags disrupting rhythm. These are normally the situations where Nürburgring specialists excel over newcomers. Yet Verstappen still managed to produce one of the fastest runs. Then Friday completely shifted the picture. As the track dried and grip improved, Verstappen delivered an 8:11, 614 lap in the top qualifying session. That single lap changed the mood in the paddock because the gap to pole across the entire Nordschleife was under half a second. Over 25 kilometers, that is incredibly small. It is like finishing a marathon just a step behind someone else. At that point, Formula One drivers began paying serious attention because Verstappen was not competing against amateurs. He was up against elite endurance specialists who know this circuit in extreme detail, sometimes better than F1 drivers know tracks like Monaco. Yet Verstappen immediately looked like he belonged among them. Another striking detail was the calmness within the Verstappen racing garage. There were no overreactions or celebrations, just a controlled and focused atmosphere. That suggested the team already believed the Mercedes AMG GT3 had strong pace and could fight near the front. What started as a novelty quickly turned serious, especially because endurance racing tests skills that Formula One often does not fully reveal: traffic awareness, patience, mental endurance, and the ability to stay composed for hours while conditions constantly shift. At the Nürburgring, there is no rest. Faster GT3 cars constantly pass through slower traffic, and a single mistake can destroy an entire race instantly. Yet, Verstappen appeared unusually composed in all of it. That combination of speed and control is what impressed observers most. Many drivers can push hard for a lap, but very few maintain that level of calm in chaotic conditions. As darkness approached the circuit, Formula One drivers watching began to realize something uncomfortable. Verstappen was not treating this like a casual endurance outing. He was behaving like someone who could already be at the top level of this discipline. The situation became even more intense as night racing set in. The Nürburgring transforms after dark headlights cut through fog, cars suddenly appear from darkness, and visibility becomes unpredictable. Drivers rely heavily on instinct rather than sight, and lap times stretch over exhausting durations. It feels like racing through a forest highway where the environment constantly shifts. This is usually where mistakes happen. Fatigue builds slowly, focus fades, and small errors quickly turn into serious consequences. Yet Verstappen remained remarkably steady. That combination of speed and control began to unsettle those watching, because speed alone is expected, but calmness under pressure is what truly stands out. A key strategic decision from Mercedes before the final qualifying session also became more understandable in hindsight. They chose to protect Verstappen instead of pushing him into unnecessary risk. At first, that decision seemed strange to fans. Why remove your fastest driver before the most important session? But given the race's demands, it made sense. Endurance racing is not just about speed. It is about survival through night, traffic, weather changes, and exhaustion. Rain was also a major uncertainty, and at the Nurburgring, wet conditions are extremely unpredictable. One part of the track can remain dry, while another becomes dangerously slick. Fog can roll in without warning, and drivers often enter corners without knowing the exact grip available. This kind of unpredictability destroys confidence for most drivers, but Verstappen has often shown the ability to perform even better in unstable conditions. Throughout his Formula One career, wet races and shifting grip levels have often highlighted his strengths. In such situations, where others become cautious, he tends to become more precise and controlled. That is why some competitors began to see a growing risk. The more difficult the conditions became, the more Verstappen seemed to thrive. Meanwhile, the Mercedes itself looked consistently strong across sessions. That confirmed the pace was genuine, not just a one-lap surprise. In endurance racing, consistency matters far more than raw speed. Because over long distances, everything is tested: mechanical reliability, tire wear, driver consistency, and strategy execution. Any weakness eventually shows. The Nurburgring is particularly unforgiving in this regard. It exposes every flaw over time. Yet Verstappen's team continued to appear composed, with clean pit stops and disciplined decisions. That level of organization suggested this was not just a casual appearance, but a serious competitive effort against established endurance team. He no longer looked like a visitor trying something new. He looked like someone adapting rapidly to one of the toughest racing environments in the world. The data also supported this impression. The Mercedes remained competitive from fourth on the grid, confirming that its qualifying pace was real. That is important because endurance racing quickly exposes any illusion of speed. Over long distances, weak cars fall behind due to degradation, failures, or strategic issues. The Nürburgring leaves no room for hidden weaknesses. Yet Verstappen's team remained calm and controlled throughout steady pit stops, careful decisions, and no signs of panic. That consistency suggested a professional and serious approach rather than a publicity exercise. By this stage, Formula One drivers watching the event began to rethink their assumptions. The conversation was no longer about whether Verstappen could handle endurance racing. It was becoming about how dominant he might be if he fully committed to it. And at that point, the Nürburgring stopped feeling like just another race.